Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you. Of course, pleased to be joined by, whenever this guy comes on, he has some thoughts to talk about. The channel's official opinionist, Ben Schneider, my teammate on Grid Network. Of course, it's good to hear that again. And then, of course, also a contributor for NASCAR.info. Remember, and for the audience out there, if you like this podcast, you can share it with your friends. Please do so. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't. We're trying to get it to 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and then we'll go from there. So really appreciate everyone's support. Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Hello again. I know we just got finished taping Grid Live Encore, so I think that show went well. Certainly no shortage of things to talk about this weekend. And of course, every time I get invited on this show, there's no shortage of things to talk about either. So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, let's jump right in. Something interesting to talk about here. Lionel Messi, of course, is this new MLS squad in Miami. I believe they were in Philadelphia this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Why don't you fill in the, I know that you're a big soccer guy, and I know you've kind of invested into the sport as well. Invested, time, and obviously not actual money. I should clear that up, but kind of talk about just like what happened there.
Well, I did go to a Union game right before I moved up here to New England again. So I did invest a little bit of money into Major League Soccer Club, I guess you could say, through my ticket sales. But no, so let me tell you, man, I've been wanting to get into soccer for a long time. My uncle's a big fan. He's been trying to get me into it. It was very interesting because he's a big Tottenham Hotspur fan, so he's been following Gareth Bale for many years. And so Gareth Bale was like one of the few big names that I've actually known for the last decade or so, and always respected him and followed his career, been a big fan of his for a long time. And how ironic was it that he comes to Major League Soccer, he joins LAFC, and he's the one that puts a knife in the heart of all the Philadelphia Union fans in MLS Cup last year. Just unbelievable how all of that worked out. And he's not even playing anymore. He retired. He didn't even retire. He went off to play for Wales in the World Cup and put a knife in the heart of the US fans again. And then he decided to retire. But no, I love Gareth Bale, and I love Lionel Messi. I always kind of thought, because I was a very casual soccer fan who would really only watch during the World Cup. So I watched in 2018, and Ronaldo had this hat trick against Spain for Portugal, and Messi just didn't seem to be meshing with the Argentine team that year, and I think they got eliminated in the round of 16 in 2018. And there were some questions as to whether or not they were even going to get out of their group. And I said, well, it has to be Cristiano Ronaldo, right? The Ronaldo-Messi debate. I think that was proven to be in the opposite direction after this most recent World Cup. And, I've got to thank Messi, really for really being a driving force that finally got me into the sport, as a really dedicated fan here. I'm still certainly not a diehard, like, some fans in Europe might be trying to pick up the ins and outs of the sport. I finally understand the offsides rules, so we got that down. I got that down by the middle of the World Cup there, and can now recognize that a lot easier in real time. But the epic World Cup final between Argentina and France, Messi and Mbappe, was just such a joy to watch. Not even as a soccer fan, but as a sports fan. So really taking a liking to Messi and his career and all of his accomplishments. And really been hoping that he would end up selfishly in Major League Soccer, and specifically with Inter Miami. I know he, has this deal with Saudi Arabia to promote tourism in there, and the Saudi Pro League had a team that was interested in him that was offering, I think their final offer was 3 years, $1.6 billion, which is just a staggering amount of money, unfathomable contract there, which he ended up turning down because he said it wasn't about the money. It was about, at this point in his career, what he wanted to do. And I think what he wanted to do was go back to Barcelona. That was, the club that gave him his start in professional soccer, and, really where the majority of the highlights of his career have been. Yeah. It was unfortunate how they ended up breaking up, and that led to him joining Paris Saint-Germain for the last couple of years. But from what I understand, Barcelona wanted to bring him back. He wanted to go back, but the finances, the club is just such a financial mess right now that it didn't really work out. And he would have had to, not either take a massive pay cut himself, or in order for the team to afford him what they would have had to pay him, everybody else on the team would have had to take big pay cuts. And he said, I don't want to, put them in that position where they have to do that. And that led to him wanting to come to America, where he already spends a good amount of his free time in South Beach, and joined David Beckham's club in Inter Miami. And this is a club that it's going to be very interesting when he gets here, because this is not a good team right now. This team, they just lost 4-1 to my Philadelphia Union Saturday night. They are at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings right now. I believe they're the third worst team in Major League Soccer overall. So I don't know if it's going to be, and I know Miami just announced they're bringing Busquets along with Messi as well, former teammate at Barcelona. So those two, I don't think alone are going to be enough. As great as they are, as great as Messi is, I think Miami has a lot of other problems that they need to try to sort out right now. I think 2024 is really when you have to look at them being a contender for MLS Cup or something like that. I think they're already so far back. But again, the thing about Major League Soccer that is so unique, as opposed to the Premier League and other leagues around the world, is that there's a massive playoff system. And again, you know how I feel about the NASCAR playoffs. I'm not a huge fan of how big Major League Soccer's playoff field is. It's only gotten bigger this year. They're doing a best of 3 in the opening round. It's just it's so over the top. I don't love it. But if you're a Miami fan, you got to love it, because your season, despite you being 27th of 29 teams in Major League Soccer right now, your season's not over, because maybe Messi comes in and maybe they claw their way back up to the standings as an 8 seed and go on a little run. We just seen 2 teams from Miami as number 8 seeds make it to the finals in the NBA and the NHL. Neither of them won it. The Heat or the Panthers ended up losing both of those championships. But who knows what's going to happen? But I think Miami, they have a lot of issues right now with that team. And as great as it is for Messi to be here, and I'm so excited for when he's going to debut for that team and that club. I think you really kind of have to look at this season as just him getting acclimated to the culture of MLS. I think 24 is going to be a more interesting year to look at for what he can actually do in terms of success on the pitch. And you got to remember, David Beckham really struggled with the LA Galaxy when he came in, despite having Landon Donovan, superstar American player, as his teammate. It took them a couple years, and they ended up winning a couple MLS Cups towards the end of Beckham's career. So we'll see how long Messi stays here and how well he fits in. I think it's going to be a learning curve. I don't think it's just as simple as plugging the greatest of all time in and we're going to fix everything like that. It's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, maybe they should go get Cristiano Ronaldo. How about that? That's the next thing they need to go do.
Well, I'll tell you, Ronaldo, from what I understand, was actually in deep discussions with Kansas City before he signed his deal with Saudi Arabia. And I've heard, I think Alexi Lawless was the one saying that he, like, if he had to guess, he would have imagined that it would have been switched around, that Ronaldo maybe would fit into the bold, lavish lifestyle of the United States a little bit more, and Messi would want to, go play in Saudi Arabia, which is a league that obviously, is notable for, these massive contracts that they're handing out, but it's certainly not seen as a top league beyond that. They're trying to get a lot of top players and build their league up with these massive contracts, but I think it was kind of a surprise to him that it ended up being the reverse, that Ronaldo went to Saudi Arabia and signed his multi-$100 million deal or whatever. And Messi's the one in Major League Soccer now. But can you imagine if we had Ronaldo in Kansas City and Messi in Miami, the 2 greatest players of our generation in Major League Soccer at the same time? Would have been pretty cool. But I don't think too many people are disappointed that we ended up getting just Messi, because that's going to bring so much positive momentum and attention to the league and to Miami in particular. It's going to be good to see.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of leagues and teams coming in, let's go to a few weeks ago. If you haven't been following the Oakland A's situation, apparently they are going to go to Las Vegas. They'll be approved by the owners at some time. I don't know when, but sometime in the next few weeks. But it just seems interesting when teams move. It's always this thing. And something about Oakland, remember, they had the Golden State Warriors. They had what was it? The
Raiders.
The Raiders too, yeah. And they went to Las Vegas, and apparently the baseball team's heading there too. And they're also in conversation about they're possibly going to get a soccer team or something like that. So be interesting. But your thoughts on all that?
Well, it really is a tale of 2 cities. It wasn't that long ago that Las Vegas did not have any pro sports teams, and now they have the Golden Knights, who just won the Stanley Cup, and the National Hockey League. The Las Vegas Aces are just coming off of a WNBA title. You have the Raiders in Las Vegas now. You have the A's that are trying to finalize a move there. You've got NBA Summer League that's taking place there, and that in Seattle, I think, have been the two cities that have been thrown out there for NBA expansion if they were ever to go down that path. Major League Soccer has been expanding at a massive rate. I don't know how big they want to get before they say we have enough teams that we can cap it now, but Las Vegas, I think, is certainly on that list. And then you look at Oakland, and this is a team that, again, as recently as 5 years ago, had the Oakland A's, of course, the Oakland Raiders, and the Golden State Warriors were in Oakland. Now, at the bare minimum, at least the Warriors only moved across the bay back to San Francisco. So they're still at least kind of, if you're a Warriors fan in Oakland, it's still not that difficult to get over to their game. Certainly a lot less convenient than it was. Right. But the Warriors, are still in the same general geographic area. But they did move out of Oakland. The Raiders moved out of Oakland to Las Vegas. Now the A's appear to be on the verge of moving out of Oakland to Las Vegas. And I just feel so awful for all the fans in Oakland, because I think a lot of people have looked at this from afar and they see the empty stadium at the Coliseum and all the empty seats, and they say, well, where's the fan support? How can you be mad if you're not showing up and tickets are as cheap as they are, and your AAA team is still bringing in more fans to the stadium? I don't know if they're unaware of how awful a condition the Coliseum is in, how it's considered one of the worst stadiums in all of professional sports. But I loved seeing the passion from what was kind of dubbed this reverse boycott that they did a couple of weeks ago. And, I think that shows that the fans exist, the fans are there, and the fans would be willing to support the team if they had better management and better owners and could put together a better team on the field. I know they've been one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball this year. That certainly hasn't helped things. I'd have to think they're probably going to end up in Las Vegas. It's unfortunate, again, for all the fans in Oakland. I know Brock Beard, my editor-in-chief over at LastCard.info, he's not too happy about losing the A's to Las Vegas. But, it sounds like these talks, are getting further and further. It's only a matter of time before we actually see it confirmed to be official.
Yeah, obviously the governor signed off on it, and obviously it was approved by the Nevada State Senate and state legislature. Of course, that'd be the state house. So, and the biggest thing is, it's just like it's like you hear all the claims that, the team didn't want to be there. The league didn't want them there. The league wanted them to move. So it's like this team that it just didn't want to be there. And, fans don't like that. It's just like, okay, just, all right, just see ya. Just don't let the door hit you in the face. I think that's kind of the reaction a lot of fans have been getting, watching a lot of coverage from out there. It's really kind of interesting to see how fans are kind of taking this, because Oakland's lost all their teams now. In a span of 5 years, they've lost all their teams.
It really is unprecedented. To be hit from, the baseball perspective and the football and the basketball, all three of those teams moving out of Oakland in such a short time span. It's almost unbelievable when you think about it. Like, what are the chances of, just imagine if from my hometown teams in Philadelphia, like, I can't imagine if the Phillies, the Eagles, and the Sixers all decided to move out within just a few years. I think, there'd be some riots in the streets of Philadelphia. They wouldn't be taking that news too well. So I can't imagine, again, how the fans in Oakland are feeling. And I feel awful for them. It's like I said, it's pretty unbelievable to take a step back and recognize what's happened here if you're an Oakland sports fan.
Yeah, I don't think the Eagles, the Phillies, the Sixers, or the Flyers are going to be moving out of there, or the Union for that matter. So, I mean, there's 5 professional sports now. I don't know if you knew that, Ben, but
man, I'll tell you, I think we're there with MLS. To draw it back to the soccer thing, we've got the 30th team coming in just a couple of years in San Diego. We got all sorts of celebrity ownership and investors coming in the league. I think the amount of momentum we have right now, especially with Messi coming, we'll see where it goes over the next few years. You got the World Cup coming here in 2026. I think it's time to crown soccer as the 5th major North American sport. And I will say, as much as I love hockey as well, it's kind of undeniable at this point. There are some markets where Major League Soccer is starting to rival the NHL for fourth place in terms of, viewership. And I can tell you, again, it helps that the Union have been very good and the Flyers have been very bad. But, the last several months I've been in Delaware, going back home to visit, and before I moved back up here, I see more Union stuff and I see Flyers gear. So, I mean, that's got to count for something as well. But
Sure.
You're right. I don't think any of the Philly teams are going to be moving out anytime soon. I think we have a pretty dedicated fan base. And I know the Sixers are planning a new arena in Center City that's, still several years away, still just in the very beginning stages of that. But I don't think we have to worry about that in Philly too much. But again, if you are a Philly fan, just try to picture that. That's what Oakland's going through right now. It's really, really unfortunate for all those fans out there.
Yeah, for sure. I know there was a lot of discussion about this, and this is probably the last thing we'll talk about here. And I know we kind of talked about it on the Encore show a little bit, but let me ask you this. What do you want out of that? Of course, we're going to talk about the broadcasts, just for any racing coverage or that. So what do you want? What do you expect out of a broadcast?
How much time do we have? No, I'll tell you what, I don't expect perfection. I don't want anybody getting the wrong message here. I know Matthew Owens and I were going back and forth on Twitter on Saturday, and like somebody responded to our tweet and said, like, you're criticizing Dale Jr. for calling 11 a ton. Really? Are we nitpicking that much? And I think Matthew's just having some fun because Matthew was a Jeff Gordon fan growing up, and they would nitpick the heck out of Jeff Gordon when he was in the Fox booth several years ago. We don't seem to do that as much with Dale Jr. So he's just like, look, I'm just providing some balance here. But of course, that's not the most unforgivable sin in the world. But I think what his frustration is with Jr. and the NBC booth in general, Rick Allen, Steve Letarte, Jeff Burton, all of them, is that there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's constant shouting over one another. I've heard some people say, including our own colleague at Grid, Jonathan Field, he was telling me he thinks they have pretty good chemistry. With apologies to Jonathan, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think it's tough sometimes to hear them talking over one another, and Junior shouting over Rick Allen saying slide job. That call came back again last night in the Nashville race. So I think that's more NBC's problem is in the booth, and trying to figure out where to best use their talent. Because again, like I mentioned on Encore tonight, I don't think you really even have to fire anybody. I think it's just a matter of recognizing who has certain strengths, who has certain weaknesses, and deciding where to best use them. And some of that goes down to the people in the booth, making sure that they're doing their jobs well. Other parts of that go back to the people in the trucks making the production decisions as to where to place all their talent and what camera angles to use. I think all that factors in. Now, I will say, I don't want to completely shut down NBC and, make it seem like there was absolutely nothing good that they did, because I do think one of the strengths NBC has over Fox is, and Brock Beard has brought this up as well, I think they do a better job going a little bit more in depth of, kind of the science behind the sport. And the next gen car in particular, they've shown a couple of graphics, with, last year of Nashville weekend with the lug nut. I think we got more answers in the first NBC race than we did in the first 16 races on Fox as to why we were having so many loose wheels and things. So I think that there's certain things like that they do pretty well. And I feel like the biggest advantage that they have going for them is the fans seem to at least acknowledge that NBC seems to want to try to put their best foot forward and do the best job they can and take the sport seriously. Whereas with Fox, you have the caricatures and the animations, and Clint Boyer has his Put It Out segment. So I think there's some complaints that Fox doesn't necessarily take themselves seriously enough. And that leads to a lesser product here. But I'll say this much, just real quick, talking about Clint Boyer again. I know he got a lot of criticism for his call the last lap wreck in the Daytona 500 this year. He just kind of was like, oh, he got turned, on the last lap of the biggest race of the year. It was very nonchalant, no energy. And then people, I think, see us, being politely critical of Dale Jr., providing some constructive criticism of him. And they're like, well, how can you provide criticism of Dale Jr., who brings all the energy in the world, when you're complaining about Boyer not bringing any energy at all? And the example that I would, throw out there is, that the solution to dehydration is not chugging 20 gallons of water all at once. There needs to be some sort of medium there. Like you can't just be completely lethargical and have no energy whatsoever, and just kind of be nonchalant and say whatever comes to mind in the most monotone voice ever. You can't do that, but you also can't constantly be shouting over one another and constantly on the rev limiter, like some of the NBC booths seems to be at times. So I think there's a balance there that needs to be better found between both networks here. Both networks, I think, have their strengths, but both certainly have their weaknesses. And I think that, we should be able to admit that, we can prefer one network over the other. We can have these conversations. I don't know if it's just Fox fatigue, but I think there are a lot of things NBC needs to work on. And I hope that, maybe as we get a little bit deeper into their portion of the season, fans might start to realize that they'll, voice their concerns on social media. And then ideally, I know Dale Jr. is very active on social media. I know he reads a lot of comments. Maybe he sees some of those things and maybe he makes adjustments and we go from there. I don't think that these are unforgivable sins or things that can't be fixed. I think they absolutely can be.
No. Well, I'll just have to see how all that works out as time goes on. I know it's pretty late night, so that's all the time we have for this. Ben will pop on here if any other issues come up or anything we want to get his take on. But Ben, thanks a lot for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
Thank you, Casey. Always appreciate it.